My coworker stole my work and said, "No one believes you, you're invisible." So I watermarked everything with my name, let her keep stealing it, then exposed it mid-meeting, when the client asked who M. Delgado was. I smiled and introduced myself. I'll never forget the way she said it. Smirking, one hand on her hip, her voice dripping with fake pity, "No one believes you anyway, you're invisible here." Her name's Claire, and we both work at a corporate consultancy firm in Chicago. Same role, same team, but she's got that loud confidence that makes people listen, while I'm the quiet type who does most of the grunt work behind the scenes. It started with a single PowerPoint presentation. I noticed one of my slides, a model I built from scratch, show up in a team meeting, except it was Claire's name on it, not mine. She was presenting it like she'd done all the research herself. Our director, James, even complimented her on the insights. I remember sitting there, trying to speak up, but my throat felt locked. That night I went home angry, but I convinced myself it was a mistake. Maybe she just used my template. Maybe I was overthinking. Then it happened again. And again. Tables, charts, written reports, whole documents I'd created were suddenly being emailed to clients, signed off as her work. The final straw was when I saw my own phrasing, my exact words, quoted in a proposal that won her a major client bonus. So I confronted her in the office kitchen. I asked why she was using my work without credit. She looked me up and down and said that line. "No one believes you anyway, you're invisible here." Then she laughed, actually laughed. For a week I felt humiliated. Every time she spoke in meetings, I saw my own research in her hands. But after the third sleepless night, something in me changed. I stopped being angry. I started planning. I began adding digital watermarks, encrypted identifiers that embedded my name, date, and timestamp invisibly into every slide, report, and Excel sheet I made. I didn't stop her from taking them. In fact, I made sure she did. Every file she borrowed became another piece of evidence. For a whole month, I let her steal from me, quietly, patiently. Then one morning, I prepared a new client presentation. I made sure the watermark, my signature, was visible in small gray text at the corner of one slide. Prepared by M. Delgado. Subtle but clear. During the meeting, Claire was in her usual form, presenting my work like it was hers. Everything was smooth until one of the clients paused mid-slide and asked, "Sorry, who's M. Delgado? Should we credit them too?" Claire froze. James turned toward her, confused. And that's when I leaned forward, smiled, and said, "Before all this blew up, I actually liked Claire. Or at least I thought I did. When she joined our firm 18 months ago, she was this confident, bubbly new hire who made everyone laugh. I'd been at the company for 3 years already, but I wasn't exactly popular. I'm not the kind of person who eats lunch with the director or stays late drinking with the project leads. I show up, do the work, go home. That's all. At first, she was nice to me. She'd come to my desk asking for help, little things like, "Hey, could you check this data model?" Or, "Can you proof this section for me?" I didn't mind. It felt good to be needed. She'd say thank you, tell me I was a genius, and sometimes bring me coffee. It wasn't until about 4 months in that I started to notice a pattern. The more I helped her, the more her name came up in meetings. She got praised for being detail-oriented, for her insightful analysis, for her strong presentation skills. All things that, ironically, she wasn't doing. I'd literally built her decks and written her bullet points. The day I realized how deep it went was when she got assigned as lead analyst on a client I'd been handling for months. My boss told me, "Claire has been showing real initiative. You should try to learn from her." That sentence burned. Learn from her? She'd been learning from me. But the office was a popularity contest, and she played it perfectly. She'd laugh with the director, make self-deprecating jokes about how she's still learning the ropes, and then hand over a perfect project that I'd spent nights perfecting. She knew I wouldn't make a scene. I never did. Still, I tried to speak up once. I told James, our director, that I'd contributed heavily to the latest report. He just nodded and said, "That's great teamwork." The message was clear. Shut up and keep being useful. I thought maybe I was just unlucky. That maybe in a few months, people would notice who was really doing the work. But Claire's confidence grew bolder, and her lies got sharper. She'd tell clients she worked alone, that she'd been the one crunching late-night numbers. I remember one night she stayed in the office until 9 p.m., not to work, but to take pictures of herself burning the midnight oil. I sat in the corner cubicle watching her post it on LinkedIn, captioned, "Love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life." Meanwhile, I'd been working 12-hour days cleaning up her messes. When she called me invisible, she wasn't just being cruel. She was stating a fact about how the office saw me. I was invisible to them anyway. But that's when the thought hit me. If no one sees me, no one will see what I'm setting up either. And so, quietly, the plan began. Once I decided to trap her, everything I did became deliberate. Every spreadsheet, every presentation, every favor she asked for, I gave her exactly what she wanted. I started labeling my drafts with file names that made them sound irresistible. Client Strategy Final 2, PPTX, Q3 Metrics Polish XLSX. She'd swoop in and copy them straight from the shared drive. Sometimes she'd even rename them, as if that could erase me. I knew, because every single one contained my digital signature, embedded invisibly in the metadata. The IT guy, Nate, had shown me years ago how to create encrypted identifiers for document tracking, something he used to prevent plagiarism in internal training decks. I'd taken that idea and perfected it. Every visual, every table, every line of code carried a hidden mark, one that could be revealed by anyone who knew where to look. For a month, I watched her rise higher. She started getting copied on emails from the VP. She got invited to client dinners. James started referring to her as a key player. Meanwhile, I kept feeding her. But I also started changing small things, deliberately introducing subtle mistakes into the files I knew she'd steal. Tiny inconsistencies that would only be obvious if she actually understood the work. A mislabeled graph axis. A reference table that led to outdated numbers. Incorrect formatting on one of the KPI projections. And then I'd send the real corrected versions directly to James through Slack, saying, "Hey, just cleaning up a few inconsistencies I noticed." I knew he never read them thoroughly, but I made sure there was a timestamp, proof that I had fixed what she was about to present wrong. By the third week, she'd already made 2 minor errors in meetings, brushing them off as typos. I could tell she was getting anxious. Her charm was starting to wear thin under pressure. Then came the client proposal, the biggest one of the quarter. The contract was worth close to $500,000 in renewals. James assigned Claire as the presenter, but most of the data came from my work. She, of course, didn't acknowledge that. I spent 3 nights preparing the full deck, complete with analysis, visuals, and recommendations. This time, though, I embedded a visible watermark, just one slide, subtle enough that only someone paying attention would notice it. It said in gray, "Prepared by M. Delgado." I knew she wouldn't catch it. She never actually looked at the details. The morning of the presentation, I watched her stride into the conference room, her voice confident as ever. I sat in the back, pretending to be an assistant, my laptop open and ready. The clients nodded along as she spoke until they reached that slide. The one with my watermark. I saw one of the clients lean forward, squinting, and ask, "Sorry, who's M. Delgado? Should we include them in the credit?" James looked confused. Claire went pale, and that's when I leaned forward in my chair and said calmly, "That's me. I'm the one who built that entire model." The room went silent, but that wasn't even the real trap. That came next. The silence after I spoke was heavy, like the air itself froze. Everyone turned toward me. Claire blinked fast, her smile twitching, trying to recover her confidence. "Oh, yes, Miguel helped with some of the data," she said quickly. "He's been supporting me on a few deliverables." Supporting her, like I was her intern. I didn't even get a chance to reply before James cut in. "Hold on, Miguel, you built this? The whole thing?" I nodded. "Every data set, every model, every recommendation." Claire opened her mouth, but I pulled up my laptop and said, "I can prove it." I mirrored my screen to the projector. With a few clicks, I opened the hidden encryption log, the digital watermark list that showed each file's author, timestamp, and the embedded identifier. Every slide she'd presented had my tag on it, created by M. Delgado. Edited by C. Harper, her initials glowed on screen like a confession. The clients exchanged looks. James just stared at the data. Then he asked, quietly, "Claire, can you explain this?" That's when it happened, the twist I didn't expect. She didn't deny it, she didn't apologize, she didn't even look scared. She looked furious at me. "Are you kidding me, Miguel?" she snapped. "You're seriously doing this right now?" "After everything we talked about," I froze. "What are you talking about?" "You promised you wouldn't make this public," she said, voice shaking. "You said you'd let me take the lead on this one so we could both move up." Everyone's eyes shot to me. I could feel the judgment, the confusion. She was flipping the script. "You agreed to it," she said again, louder. "We were supposed to be a team. You said you didn't care about credit as long as we got the results." My pulse pounded. I'd never said that. But her delivery was perfect, voice trembling just enough to sound betrayed. James looked between us like he didn't know who to believe. I tried to defend myself, but she'd already taken control of the room. She turned to James and said, "I can't believe he's doing this after I confided in him. I thought he understood the plan." "Plan?" James asked. She just sniffed, shaking her head like she was too hurt to speak. In that moment, I realized what she'd done. She wasn't just stealing my work. She was stealing my credibility. She was turning the whole thing into an emotional manipulation game, painting me as the jealous subordinate who went rogue. And it was working. James shut the meeting down early, promising to review the matter internally. The clients left awkwardly. Claire shot me one last look on the way out, half smirk, half threat. By the end of the day, HR called me in. Someone had filed a complaint against me. Claire had accused me of harassment, data tampering, and professional sabotage. The same files I'd built as evidence were now being used against me. She'd gotten ahead of me again. That HR meeting nearly broke me. They said someone had reported that I'd tampered with Claire's files and added misleading author marks to make it look like her work was mine. When they used those exact words, author marks, I knew she'd somehow found out about the watermarks. That meant she'd seen my plan coming. She must have noticed one, figured out what it was, and flipped the entire narrative to protect herself. For the first time in years, I felt powerless. But HR couldn't fire me right away. They said they'd investigate. So I had time to get careful, time to get mean. I spent the next few nights going through everything I'd made for her over the past 2 months. I wasn't looking for credit anymore. I was looking for proof of intent. Because she hadn't just stolen my work, she'd used it in external contracts. That meant she'd committed actual, documented fraud. And the best part, she didn't even realize how much digital evidence she'd left behind. You see, our company uses Microsoft Teams and OneDrive. Everything we create is logged, backed up, and time-stamped in the cloud. Every time she copied, renamed, or edited one of my documents, it generated a new version history tied to her account. I pulled up her activity records through the shared workspace audit tool. Every Claire Harper edit was layered on top of my original uploads, complete with timestamps proving I'd made them first. And that wasn't even the good part. I also discovered that she'd sent my draft reports directly to clients from her personal Gmail, bypassing company protocol. That was a massive breach of data policy. She'd done it to avoid the company's metadata tracking, but it backfired. Because Gmail headers show the original file source. When I opened one, my signature was embedded right there in the raw file data. That was my smoking gun. But I didn't rush it, not yet. I waited until Friday when she usually left early. I stayed late in the office, pretending to catch up on work. Once the place was empty, I exported all the audit logs, saved the emails she'd sent to clients, and combined everything into one folder, proof package zip. Then I uploaded it to a private Google Drive link and shared it with one person. James, our director. No message, no subject line, just the link. That was step 1. Step 2 was making sure she couldn't twist it again. I knew she'd run to him first thing Monday morning when she realized the meeting was coming. So I prepared a statement. Factual, calm, bulletproof. No emotion, just evidence. I also scheduled a quiet meeting request for 10 a.m. Monday with James and HR. I knew she'd see it on the shared calendar. I wanted her to panic. Over the weekend, I barely slept. Not because I was scared, but because I couldn't stop imagining her face when she realized I'd flipped the entire script on her. By Monday morning, the whole office was buzzing. Something had leaked. Someone told me James had been calling legal all Sunday night. When Claire walked in, she was pale. She looked at me once across the open floor, eyes tight with fury. By 9:30, she got called into his office. By 9:45, the shouting started. And by 10, when I walked into the HR room, she was sitting there already, arms crossed, trembling, pretending to be calm. I sat down across from her, placed a small USB drive on the table and said, "That's everything you ever stole from me. You can go ahead and explain it to them. But what happened next, what she admitted under pressure, was worse than anything I'd expected. The HR room was quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent light overhead. I could feel the tension between us like static. Claire sat stiffly, chin high, pretending to look unbothered, but her leg was shaking. James was there too, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. The HR rep, Tanya, had a stack of printed emails in front of her. My emails, Claire's emails, the ones I'd gathered. Tanya started reading aloud. These files were taken from shared company drives, renamed under Miss Harper's account, and forwarded externally without authorization. Claire didn't look up. Then Tanya turned to her. Do you have any explanation for why Mr. Delgado's author tags appear on every single report you claim to have written? Silence. Finally, Claire said quietly, Yes, I do. She looked straight at me. Miguel and I had an agreement. I opened my mouth to argue, but she kept going louder this time. He said he'd help me because he owed me. Owed you, I repeated. For what? She smiled faintly, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was the kind of expression that said you have no idea what's coming. Then she turned to James and said, Ask him why he deleted the email from 2 years ago. The one from my old firm. I felt my stomach drop. She reached into her bag, pulled out a printed page, and slid it across the table. My name was at the top, Miguel Delgado, Senior Data Analyst. The email subject line read, Urgent, potential data integrity issue in client report, forwarding to M. Delgado. It was dated before I'd even met her back when she worked at another consultancy I used to freelance for. And attached to that printout was a document with my initials on it, a model with a missing data validation line. It looked sloppy, like the kind of mistake that could cost a client millions if implemented. I barely remembered it. A side contract, a rush job, something I'd never thought about again. But she was right, it was mine. He messed up a project at my old company, she said softly. It nearly cost us a contract. When he joined this firm, I didn't tell anyone. I just thought, maybe I'd finally get a chance to work with him again. Maybe make sure he learned from it. Her tone shifted, like she was trying to sound sympathetic. But then she added, when he realized I knew about that mistake, he said he'd help me with my projects. No credit, no fuss, just to keep it quiet. Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt heat rush to my face. That's not true, I said. She's twisting it. That job was years ago, there was no agreement. But Claire didn't blink. You can deny it all you want, she said, but I kept everything. And she did. She pulled up her phone and opened a folder, screenshots, emails, even a short voice memo. My voice distorted slightly from some conversation months ago where I'd said, I'll fix it, don't worry about credit. It was out of context, but it was enough to sound bad. James rubbed his temples. Tanya scribbled notes. For a moment, I thought I'd lost everything. She had found a way to drag the past into the present, to make it look like I'd been helping her out of guilt, not because she'd been stealing. But then I caught something small that cracked the whole story open. That old email, the one from her old firm, it was dated 3 months before I was ever hired there. And the client name on the report, it wasn't even one that company had ever serviced. It was a fake document. She'd forged the entire thing. And that's when I realized she hadn't just been trying to protect her career. She'd been building a narrative, a backstory, a way to destroy mine. She'd been planning this longer than anyone knew. When I saw the date on that fake email, something in me clicked into place. She hadn't forged it in panic, she'd planted it. Months ago, maybe longer. Tanya left the room for a few minutes to verify the email headers. James sat in silence, watching us both. Claire's face didn't move. She didn't fidget, didn't look nervous. Just calm, blank, like she was waiting for something. When Tanya came back, she looked shaken. That email you provided, Miss Harper, she said carefully, isn't authentic. It was created last month on your personal laptop. The metadata shows your account name on the PDF export. The air went cold. Claire just smiled faintly and said, I figured you'd find that. I stared at her. Why go through all this? You could have just done your job, you're smart enough. She turned toward me then, finally looked me in the eyes. Her voice was low, steady, and terrifyingly casual. Because I don't want to do the work, Miguel. I want to be seen doing the work. That's what gets you promoted. That's what gets you remembered. I didn't answer. She kept going. You think this company cares about who actually runs the data or who stays up until midnight fixing formulas. They care about who they like, who looks good in meetings. You could have worked here 10 years and still be nobody." Her voice dropped lower. "But you didn't just make the mistake of being invisible. You made the mistake of trying to prove you mattered, and that made you dangerous." She said it like it was obvious, like she was explaining gravity. James was staring at her now, too, mouth slightly open. Claire turned toward him and shrugged. "You wanted results, I gave them to you, and I made sure the guy who could prove otherwise looked unstable. That's how this game works." The worst part? She wasn't ranting. She wasn't emotional. She sounded proud. "Every place I've ever worked, there's someone like you, Miguel," she said, looking back at me. "Quiet, overlooked, naive enough to think talent speaks for itself. And every single time, I've found a way to use them until they either quit or get fired." Then she smiled, this thin, cruel thing that made my stomach twist. "You were just the easiest one yet." It wasn't even about the work anymore. It wasn't about jealousy or competition. It was about control. She enjoyed making people disappear. Tanya finally interrupted her, voice trembling slightly, and told Claire she was being placed on immediate suspension pending legal review. Claire didn't argue. She just stood up, smoothed her skirt, and said, "You'll miss me when the clients start asking who really did all that great work." Then she walked out. James sat there for a long moment, saying nothing. Finally, he looked at me and said quietly, "I think we've been blind." He didn't know the half of it, because I wasn't done yet, not even close. After HR escorted Claire out, I didn't feel relief, not right away. I felt hollow. For weeks I'd lived on adrenaline, anger, and caffeine. When it was over, all that was left was quiet. But suspension pending review wasn't enough. She'd walked out that door too calm, too confident. People like her always land on their feet. New job, new lies, clean start. I wasn't going to let that happen. So while HR and legal dragged through their process, I started mine. Remember those audit logs? I made copies of everything. Not just the files she stole from me, but every report she'd ever sent to clients, especially the ones from her personal Gmail. I pulled together a timeline of how she'd misrepresented company work, falsified credit, and tampered with client deliverables. Then I made one last folder. I called it Harper Report Final. Inside were every stolen project she'd claimed credit for, every email showing her sending confidential data to personal accounts, a full breakdown of the encryption metadata, signed and notarized by our IT compliance officer. And the final piece, a recorded call with the client from that fateful meeting, confirming that I had been the one communicating with them the entire time, not her. I packaged it cleanly, no emotion, just facts. Then I sent it to 3 people: our corporate legal department, the client company's compliance office, and this part I debated for hours, her next employer. Because, yes, she'd already secured a new position. I found out from LinkedIn the week after she was suspended. She was starting as a senior strategic analyst at a boutique firm downtown. Her "Welcome to the team" post had over 200 likes. So I forwarded the report directly to the managing partner of that firm with a short note. "For your records, please verify the authorship of the following materials before associating them with your brand." 2 days later, her post disappeared. 3 more days and her profile was gone entirely. Then came the final fallout. The client, the one she'd deceived, filed a complaint against our company for data misrepresentation. But when the evidence surfaced, it was clear who was responsible. She was terminated immediately, with a cease and desist for breach of confidentiality. HR never told me exactly what happened after, but word got around that she'd been blacklisted from multiple consulting networks. One coworker said she'd moved back to her hometown in Ohio to figure things out. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even tell anyone. But the next time we had a department meeting, James pulled me aside. He said quietly, "You were right about everything. We won't forget this." And for the first time in years, they didn't look through me. They looked at me. I got promoted 2 months later, not because I asked, but because they couldn't ignore me anymore. The day I cleaned out Claire's old desk, I found something under the keyboard, a sticky note in her handwriting. It said, "Visibility is everything." I smiled, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash, because she was right about one thing. Visibility is everything. She just never expected that I'd make sure the world saw her for who she really was. M. Delgado, invisible, huh, not anymore.